All right, welcome. This video is predicting that famous singer-songwriter Paul Simon of Simon and Garfunkel will die on August 31st, 2025. This video, however, was produced prior to it being learned the way in which Paul Simon will die. It is now recognized through God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel, that Paul Simon will first slip and fall on August 30th, and then, as a result of his injuries, will die on August 31st. Paul Simon has a big hit, a hit song, Slip Slidin' Away. And this is one way in which God, or through this song and many other prophetic signs, God is communicating that Paul Simon will slip and fall on August 30th and then die the following day. Currently, there is no news of Paul Simon's health. Absolutely no news of Paul Simon's health is in the media. Furthermore, he recently finished a concert tour on August 6th. So as of August 6th, he was healthy enough to perform at concerts. But given now that we know he will die from falling, his health, his state of health, would be irrelevant anyway. So it'd be one thing to predict the death of an old man. He is 83. That said, he could live another 7 years. There's no way to really know that he will die on August 31st because there's no news of his personal health. But more than that, he is predicted to die from falling and suffering from the injuries. And that cannot be known ahead of time. There's no prior warning or heads up, such as a person's health or state of health. Again, just to be clear, Paul Simon is predicted to die on August 31st, yes, and he is old, yes, but he is predicted to die from falling. And that date is known also to be August 30th, which is after today's date. The post date of the video you are watching on the social media platform proves that this video was posted prior to August 30th. And of course, there's no humanly way possible that I could know that Paul Simon will slip and fall on August 30th and then die the following day. In other words, when this prediction comes to pass, it'll prove everything that I say in this video, and that's the purpose of this prediction that is from God. And it is also, of course, to prove that the righteous Christian God of the Bible is the true God. All right, welcome. This video is predicting that famous singer-songwriter Paul Simon of Simon and Garfunkel, the duo from the 1960s and 70s, will die on August 31st, 2025. This video you are watching proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, for one thing, because of the post date that the video is posted on the social media platform you are watching this on. Also, this email here, as you can see, was just composed, and it documents this prediction for August 31st and the death of Paul Simon. And as we can see here, there is this timestamp here of August 13th. All right, so these reasons for knowing how it is that Paul Simon will die on August 31st are known since at least August 13th. Currently, there is zero news in the media regarding Paul Simon's health. Besides that, he recently had a bad back and had to cancel one of his or two of his concerts, or postpone them. No, I think he just canceled them, I forget. But then he resumed his concert tour right after. He was only absent for a day or two because of a bad back. And people I don't think, die from having bad backs. So anyway, that said, the knowledge that God is using Paul Simon and his death and the timing of his death as a major prophetic sign has been known for many years. 3 years, over 3 years. And there are many, many profound reasons for why God is using Paul Simon. All right, and so here is how the mind of the skeptic or the agnostic atheist will think. This is what the skeptic will think. They will conclude that I must have made videos and provided reasons for many different dates, including maybe even every date of the year, hoping that eventually Paul Simon would finally die. But that is crazy. And only a crazy person would do such a thing. And truthfully, the person that concludes that this is what is going on here is the crazy person. That's completely irrational. And so, for one thing, Paul Simon could live another 7 years, and he is only 83, and it could be a long time. There's no reason to know that Paul Simon is going to die anytime soon, let alone specifically on a date. And I don't have time to do what I just suggested. That's literally crazy. All right, but that's how the mind of the skeptic works, because truthfully, rejecting God isn't rational. It's completely irrational. That's another subject. What further confirms the prediction here are these reasons for how I know August 31st and Paul Simon. These reasons could not be concocted in the imagination of a human being. You will see this. You will see these profound reasons. And like I say, no human imagination could ever dream up these sorts of ideas, let alone for multiple dates. Okay, so let's get into it. This email is documenting the prediction that singer-songwriter Paul Simon of Simon and Garfunkel will die on August 31st, 2025. Paul Simon is predicted to die in the month of August because August is the 8th month of the year. The first verse of the book of Revelation, chapter 8, describes a period of silence that is observed in heaven. Simon's first big hit that launched his career was Sound of Silence. God uses firsts for prophetic signs. Paul Simon performed on the first broadcast of Saturday Night Live in Manhattan after the events of 9/11 and 2001. He also performed at the 9/11 memorial on the 10th anniversary of 9/11. Simon is predicted to die on August 31st, 2025. On this night, so in other words, what I've established here is that in God's signs, Paul Simon is, if you will, symbolism for 9/11. He's also from New York City, known for being from New York City. Okay, so I've established this connection between Paul Simon and 9/11. Now, on this night of August 31st, Venus, the planet, will be in conjunction with the Beehive Cluster constellation in Cancer. This is symbolism for Jesus' rapture of the church. So the planet Venus in Bible prophecy is said to be symbolic of Jesus. And the Beehive Cluster is symbolic of the church. It's made up of many stars, but it's the Beehive Cluster. It's symbolic of the church. And this is an example of these signs in the night sky that God has provided over the years that symbolize the rapture. Because as the Apostle Paul wrote, the followers, the true followers, the faithful of God will be raptured, as it's said, caught up into the sky, into the clouds, and they will meet the Lord there and then be with him forever, and then return with him, in fact, at his second coming, incidentally, in their resurrected bodies. This is the period that they will be hidden in heaven will be the period of the extreme wrath of God on earth. So they'll miss that. They'll be saved from that. They'll be raptured. So this is an example of this. Okay. Now on October 18th, 1975, Paul Simon was involved in a skit on Saturday Night Live that involved the Killer Bees, which was a thing back in the 70s on Saturday Night Live. these cast members dressed up as bees, the killer bees. October 18th, 1975, and Paul Simon was involved in one of these skits. October 18th, 1975 is 18,215 days before August 31st, the date it is predicted that Paul Simon will die. And again, this is the date in 1975 that Paul Simon was involved in one of these Killer Bees skits. Now, 18,215 is the 4,639th semi-prime number. God uses these. These are numbers that are divisible only by two other prime numbers. Now, 4,639 is the 626th prime number, and 626 is the 191st semi-prime number. And God uses combinations of two ones and a 9 to hint at 9/11, which brings us back to 9/11, which, as I mentioned, Paul Simon is symbol of, is a symbol for 9/11. That's why we have the connection between the Saturday Night Live broadcast in Manhattan, where the events took place on 9/11, and Simon's predicted death. And again, this connection boils down to a number that hints at 9/11. Additionally, the beehive cluster is known as M44. In God's signs, the number 4 is associated with Paul Simon. I've explained this so many times, but I guess I should explain it again. Paul Simon is associated with the number 4 in God's signs because of the trumpet judgment that follows the period of silence in heaven in Revelation chapter 8. And again, Paul Simon's first hit was Sound of Silence. There's this trumpet, one of the 7 trumpet judgments. And by the way, 7 is the 4th prime number. One of the 4th prime number of judgments is the trumpet judgment that speaks of the demons that cross the bridge from the bottomless pit, demonic realm, into the earthly realm after the key opens the door. Okay, now Simon's biggest album with Garfunkel was Bridge Over Troubled Water. And so that's the bridge. Now, he's known for music composition, and music composition involves keys. So there's this key that opens the door. And the door in God's signs is the same symbolism as the bridge. Now, the door is the symbol that is the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. The 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the symbol for a door. The name of that letter is Dalat, which is where we get the word delta, the 4th letter of the Greek alphabet. And from that, we get the word in English, door. So door is symbolism for 4, and so is Paul Simon because of the bridge door symbolism. Another thing that God is using Paul Simon for is to point to this idiom that is in the book of Amos, because famous Amos, the founder of famous Amos Cookies, Wally Amos, was the first agent to sign Simon and Garfunkel, and he lured them into his office with cookies. He died at the age of 88 in 2024, and that hinted at Revelation chapter 8. The first verse of that hinted at the book of Amos chapter 8, because his name is Amos, and he died at 88. Now, the first verse of Amos is a description of a basket of summer fruit. Again, that's relevant because of the first verse of the 8th chapter of Revelation, which is the Sound of Silence verse. But the first verse of the book of Amos chapter 8 is the description of the basket of summer fruit, which baskets of summer fruit appear in the month of August, which is a confirmation that Simon will die in the month of August, as did Wally Amos, by the way, die in the month of August. Now, also, the book of Amos begins with the first chapter, and Paul Simon's prophetic dream that he says had in it a voice that instructed him to make the album 7 Psalms and to name it 7 Psalms. That dream, that prophetic dream of his, occurred on the date 1/15. Well, there's more reasons to know that God is using Simon to point to Amos chapter 1 with its 15 verses than this. But anyway, in this first chapter with its 15 verses is a repeating Hebrew idiom. And by the way, Paul Simon is Jewish. And this idiom is for 3 transgressions and for 4. And this idiom means the tolerable limit of transgressions has been exceeded, and now judgment and destruction is unavoidable. That's the 4 part of this idiom, which is another reason why Paul Simon is being used in association with the number 4. Okay, so that's why M44. Also, speaking of the judgment, the 44th president is the Antichrist. Now, on 9/11, 44 people, and Paul Simon is associated with 9/11, as I began explaining in this paragraph, 44 people died in the flight that crashed at a 40-degree angle into a 40-acre crater that is 40 plus 40 miles outside of Pittsburgh, the city of bridges, as in Paul Simon, bridge over troubled water, as in Pittsburgh, the bottomless pit that is opened, and then the demons cross over the bridge through the door that's opened with a key. And by the way, the word key is equal to 41 in simple English gematria. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. And Simon was born in 41. And again, music composition uses keys. Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel reunited for a free concert in Central Park, one of the largest attended concerts in history. This concert is an important prophetic sign. On February 23, 2024, a famous owl died in Central Park. A number of months prior to the owl's death, it had escaped the Central Park Zoo. It died after it collided with a tower, which was symbolism that hinted at the planes, including an American Airlines flight with a giant eagle painted on its tail that crashed into the Twin Towers south of Central Park. The theme of Paul Simon's new album is of crossing over into the afterlife. The cover art of this Seven Psalms album uses Thomas Moran's Two Owls. Seven Psalms is Simon's 15th solo album. 15 is equal to 5 plus 5 plus 5. The name of the owl that died in Central Park was Flacco. Flacco died 5 plus 5 plus 5 days after Joe Flacco received the NFL's Comeback Player of the Year award at a ceremony before the Super Bowl. Joe Flacco wears jersey number 15, which is 5 plus 5 plus 5. Joe Flacco is known for winning the Super Bowl as the quarterback for the Ravens. Ravens, like owls, are birds with dark symbolism. The Antichrist is the president who was known to be a night owl while in the White House. God uses firsts for signs. The first instance of the word owl in the Bible is in Leviticus 11:17. The Antichrist is described in Zechariah 11:17 in the Bible. The name Bama in the Bible is H11:17 in Strong's Concordance. And that's important because of the equation that God is using that aligns with what Jesus said in Luke 10:18, which is that he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven. Well, the word Barack Obama means lightning from heaven because the word lightning in Hebrew is Barak, and Bama it means high place, which is this 11:17 word. And in the Bible, the high place is an idiom for heaven, as for example, Lucifer is said to have fallen from the high place. And also the Jews would, the high places is a euphemism in the Bible for the false religious worship that the Jews would conduct on the tops of mountains. So in other words, this Bama isn't a positive really. And anyway, the word for from in Aramaic, the language Jesus would have spoken, is O. And so Barack Obama means lightning from heaven. Either Jesus didn't know what he was saying when he said this, or he knew there would be a famous president and said this anyway, knowing that it would confuse us, or he was revealing the identity of the Antichrist. Obviously, the latter option is the only one that makes any sense. So anyway, we have this owl. Now, and it points to Obama, and furthermore, he was the night owl. Now, the night owl president will make a dramatic comeback and become the president again, which is the prophetic reason for the Comeback Player of the Year award. 5 plus 5 plus 5 days after Flacco got his award, player number 5 plus 5 plus 5, received his Comeback Player of the Year award, the owl named Flacco died. The Antichrist is the basketball president. Flacco died on the same day of a sports news story about Victor Wembanyama's, which hints at Obama, rare 5x5 game. Okay, the Antichrist is the basketball president. So we have this basketball player who had a 5x5 game. His name hints at Obama, the basketball president. Now, a 5x5 game is when a player scores at least 5 points, rebounds, blocks, steals, and assists, which is 5 categories. Wembanyama plays for San Antonio, which is near where Paul Simon currently lives. Okay, now, so this, once again, this Flacco Owl died on the same day as the 5x5 game by Wembanyama, which points to Paul Simon because that's where he plays, right near where he lives. And that Flacco Owl sign and the 5x5 game was 5 plus 5 days after Flacco won the award, and he wears jersey number 5 plus 5 plus 5. All right. Now, Paul Simon is predicted to die on August 31st, exactly 555 days after the death of Flacco the Owl and Wembanyama's 5x5 game, which was 5 plus 5 plus 5 days after Flacco, player number 5 plus 5 plus 5, received his Comeback Player of the Year award. In other words, all of that serves to confirm this 555 days connection to Simon's predicted death. And we're talking about an owl's death that hinted at Simon's death because of the Seven Psalms album with the owls on it, etc. The most evil king in Israel's history ruled for 55 years. And I believe Satan is mentioned 55 times in the Bible, the word Satan. Simon sang about driving up the I-55 highway to the king of rock and roll's Graceland mansion. The Central Park concert attracted 500,000 people and raised over $50,000 for the Central Park. The 500th word in the concordance is the word for Satan, Antichrist, by the way. The name Paul Simon is equal to 500 in Hebrew gematria. The concert was exactly 500 months before the release of Simon's Seven Psalms album that depicts owls on its cover. And again, the owl died in Central Park where the concert was, and we have this 500 months connection from the concert that was attended by 500,000 people involving Paul Simon, whose name is equal to 500, and there was $50,000 raised from the concert. Now, again, the and the Seven Psalms album, which was released exactly 500 months after with owls on its cover, was released exactly 500 months after the Central Park concert, and the owl died in Central Park. Well, anyway, the Seven Psalms album with owls on its cover is Simon's 5 plus 5 plus 5th solo album. This 555 days in between the death of Flacco the Owl, Wembanyama's 5x5 game, and Simon's predicted death is also 18 months and 8 days. H188 in Strong's Hebrew Concordance is the word that means woe! Exclamation mark. The fifth trumpet judgment that follows the sound of silence in heaven is the first of the woes in the book of Revelation. The fifth trumpet of God's judgment describes demons crossing the bridge from the bottomless pit into the earthly realm. Simon and Garfunkel's fifth album was Bridge Over Troubled Water. The demons will possess people for 5 months. This will be facilitated by 5G frequencies and delta brainwaves. Music is frequencies. The song Graceland begins with the lyric about Simon driving up the I-55 and how the Mississippi Delta was shining like a national guitar. Simon infamously broke up with his girlfriend, Shelley Duvall, at the airport, as in portal, as in door, to the bottomless pit and the demons, before she flew to the UK to film the movie The Shining, which is about demonic possession, and specifically also the possession demonically of a giant hotel, which is mansion symbolism. And that brings us back to Paul Simon, who sang about the Graceland Mansion, and how at the beginning of that song, the first lyric is how the Mississippi Delta was shining like a national guitar. The term shining here hints at demonic possession. Those who take the mark of the Antichrist will become demonically possessed. The mark of the Antichrist begins with an MR and also ends with an NA thing, which is transhumanism technology. and in God's signs is symbolized by the Space Needle in Seattle. Because the space is transhumanism symbolism, and of course the needle is symbolism for the mark. Simon is predicted to die 5 times 5 days after Simon's last concert on his Quiet Celebration tour, which hints at Sound of Silence in Revelation 8:1. And it's a typo here because the last concert was in Seattle near the Space Needle. Okay? So that's the thing. The last concert was next to the Space Needle. That's how it ties to Paul Simon. That last concert was 5 times 5 days before he's predicted to die. And the day of his last concert next to the Space Needle was the same day that RFK Jr. announced the cancellation of 22 contracts worth $500 million for the begins with an MR and also then ends with an NA thing research. Okay? Now the number 22 in God's signs is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. Because the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist described in the book of Ezekiel would have been a Tav mark, the last and 22nd letter of the alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet. And the mark of the Antichrist is described in the last book of the Bible, which is the 22nd book out of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. Now, the contracts were worth 500 million because the 500th word in the Greek concordance is the word for Antichrist. All right. And again, Paul Simon's name is equal to 500 in Hebrew gematria. Now, the date 8/6, which was the last day of Simon's tour in Seattle next to the Space Needle, and the cancellation of the contracts for the mark of the Antichrist research, this date 8/6 hints at 86, and H86, the word in the Hebrew concordance that means to bow the knee, and G86, which is the word in the Greek concordance that means Hades, hell. In other words, taking the mark of the Antichrist is tantamount to denying Jesus and bowing the knee to Satan and going to hell, which is why Bible prophecy says that those who take it will go to hell. This is merely scratching the surface of the reasons for how this prediction is known in advance. Let me just pause here for a second, actually. The mark of the Antichrist is the thing. It doesn't need in its current form. It doesn't need an additional technology to go with it, such as an additional, or also an additional false form of religious worship. For those who are wise, it did come with a false form of religious worship. And it doesn't need a supposed new age of dispensation after supposedly all quote-unquote Christians will be raptured. In fact, one of the main reasons why the vast majority of quote-unquote Christians have already taken the mark of the Antichrist is that it is judgment for this particular doctrine, which Jesus said he hates, this Nicolaitan doctrine, and is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth on those that teach and have the works that are product of this doctrine. Dispensationalism, which is the package that free grace comes in. Close cousins with sovereign grace, Reformed theology, which comes in the package of Calvinism. This is the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day. And these two things, what the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day is, and what the mark of the Antichrist is, will be proven to be true when this prediction comes to pass. And make no mistake, I know far better than you the reason and purpose for this prediction. It is to prove the controversial things that I am saying. That is the reason for this prediction. Case closed. There is no more debate after this prediction as to what the mark of the Antichrist is and whether or not it needs something else to go with it. The commonly held objections that people have based on their understanding of Bible prophecy are answered in the must-watch Snakebite video on this channel, but make no mistake, when the prediction comes to pass, it'll prove that these commonly held objections are not correct. Now, nowhere in the Bible does it say that one cannot repent after having taken the mark of the Antichrist. This is merely scratching the surface, and in other words, apologize to God and beg for his forgiveness. This is merely scratching the surface of the reasons because they've been marked, because of the things that put into the chromosomes with this technology here, which is the protruding amino acid, which is snake venom, the symbol of Satan in the Bible. So that person is marked. That's the mark. And that's what happened. Doesn't need an additional something to go with it. People are marked with this. Okay, it's also a spiritual abomination because it uses cells from aborted people that haven't been born yet. Okay, so this is merely scratching the surface of the reasons for how this prediction is known in advance. For more information, please visit odyssey.com, spelled ODYSEE.com, or rumble.com video channel, Asteroid Prediction, and also read the website trumpprediction.com. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, "Jesus loves you," unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.